What are your emotions as the day draws near?
Mike, I'll tell you what, my emotions are off the charts. I think the biggest thing that I hope for right now is that Sunday comes in a heck of a hurry. And the reason I say that is because if you've looked at a schedule that they make us do when we get back to Canton, we're busy all the time. And, we've got a dinner at 6 o'clock on Friday night. I've got my party from 9 to 1 o'clock that evening, and then at 7 o'clock in the morning I got to go into a parade, and then at 7:05 do a speech. So I just wish it was over with, but I'm so happy that it's come about.
When Techstram hired you all those years ago, could you have imagined that this day would come?
I was worried about being there for 1 year. And it's really funny how Tex hired me, because he called me in October of 1959 and said, I got a job for you. And I said, Tex, I don't know anything about television. He said, no. He said, we're going to have a franchise in Dallas. And he said, I want you to be in charge of player personnel. But he said, before you come, be sure you steal everything you can from the Rams scouting files.
Any particular signings that you made through the years that stuck out as ones you're especially proud of?
Oh, I'm proud of so many. It's like having 200 children. I'm so proud of the Jethro Pughs and the Cornell Greens and just everybody that we had on our team, the Starbucks, the Danny Whites, the Tony Dorsetts. We had a lot of great players. I don't know if any franchise has really had as many great players name-wise as we had, and it's made such a pleasure for you guys to cover.
For me, a dream matchup would be the Chiefs and the Cowboys. Talk about those early days when the Texans were right there with the Cowboys.
Well, that was in 1960, and the philosophies were different. They were kind of going around and giving away seats, or saying if you came with a barber's shirt on, you got a free ticket. Whereas Tex put all the money into scouting and player development. And the interesting thing was, I'd like to know if the story is true, that there was a coin flip and the loser left town. And I asked Mr. Murkison about it one time, and he said, well, I've got the coin in my pocket. But he didn't say whether it was the winner or loser.
Just think about, people call you the godfather of scouting and everything you've done that people still use it today. Can you reflect back on what that means?
Well, I'll tell you what happened over the weekend, and Mike Kinahan, who's our producer, did a great job. We found Salam Karisi, and we've been looking for him for 6 months, and we finally found him. And what we started with was like the first time that somebody wanted to take the side off the Panama Canal. Nobody had ever done it before. And so we did things then, and they talk about analytics now. We did the same thing 50 years ago, except we called them probabilities instead of analytics. And so I'm so proud that my relationship with Bill Parcells and people like that have continued on through the years, thanks to what we did. And Belichick, I think I visited him about 20 times when he was both at Cleveland and New England, just to show him how our scouting system worked, and it worked out pretty well for him.
Gil, during the years when I would talk to you about the Hall of Fame, you would kind of shut me down a little bit. Give me your thoughts in terms of, did you think it wouldn't happen, and now that it's going to happen?
Well, I always thought there was a possibility of happening, but when you realize there's only 326 people in the Hall of Fame, the odds are not very good. And there are so many people out there, but thank goodness they went to this contributors category, and it gave us a chance to get in. And I just hope that gives other people that were scouts that came up the same way I did as a chance to get into the Hall of Fame.
Special kind of 20 guys possibly getting in here in the fall of next year. Do you think that Drew and Cliff will be on that list?
They deserve to be on that list. The unfortunate thing is we got some other guys too. I think Leroy Jordan and Chuck Hawley, as an example, deserve to be on that list. I think a guy like Cornell Green deserves to be on that list. We've had so many great players in our organization, and unfortunately we fell behind 15 years ago before Rick Goslin got us up to speed, so to speak, but we're still behind. And when you talk about somebody like Drew Pearson, this guy led the league in receiving twice with 55 and 56 catches. Well, it shows the time, and everybody says, well, so-and-so caught 900 passes and Drew caught 450. And that's where we're confused. But to have those two guys, Cliff Harris went to the final 6, and for some reason didn't get the votes for whichever reason I can't understand. But I sure do hope that we get some guys in. And I think it's great too, because of the fact what you're going to do is they're also going to bring some coaches in, and they're also going to bring some more contributors in. So you don't you can name 100 players that should be in there. So I hope that we catch up a little bit anyway.
You had holdouts when you were running the Cowboys.
I just gave him more money. No, you know, it's really interesting. Everson Walls said the other day, they said, well, how about dealing with Gil? He said, I considered hiring a hitman to take care of him because he's the toughest guy I ever had to negotiate with. But, you know, it's unfortunate when these guys hold out. And a lot of times the holdout is really goes to the agent, because no agent wants to say that his player signed for less than somebody else. And that's a big problem. I just hope these guys get into camp that are out right now running back.
I know you don't, they're all your kids, but can you just talk about a guy like Cornell Green? You know, everybody's talking about these basketball players, and you did it way back then, and he's really the first successful one to come from basketball or football. Just that whole process of going and finding him and what he accomplished.
Clarence, Cornell is the greatest story of all time. You know, I'll tell you, with Tom Landry, you could always tell who he liked and who he didn't like as much. And the big thing was that if he liked you, it was Cornell. If he didn't like you, it was Green. And so we signed a basketball player. And first of all, I learned a lesson. I went up to sign him on March 6th into Logan, Utah. And to get to Logan, Utah is not easy. And I had to negotiate with John Ralston, who was the head football coach, and Liddell Anderson, who was the basketball coach. And I offered him $250 to sign. And they said, no, we got to have a lot more than that. We got to have a lot more than that. I wasn't smart enough to say, what does a lot more mean? They wanted $500.
Right.
And so we played after we went to training camp in northern Michigan that year, and Cornell was our starting quarterback and our cornerback in our first preseason game. We played the Baltimore Colts down in Norfolk, Virginia, and he got beat for a touchdown pass by Jimmy Orr. And as he came off the field, Coach Snyder said, Cornell, what happened out there? And he said, well, the guy just went down and stepped on my foot. And he said, Cornell, why aren't you wearing any hip pads? He said, well, Coach, he says, you know that part that hangs down in front? It just rubbed my legs raw. He'd been wearing his hip pads backwards for 6 weeks. And you know, for what he stands for. I mean, this guy's telephone number when he came to Dallas was 214-330-6110. It still is.
Right.
That tells you a little bit about dependability.
What are your emotions like this week now that it's Hall of Fame week and now you're out here in California where you spend so many crazy games?
My emotions are very high, and it's an honor to be talking to all of you. And I'm just, as I said previously, I'm going to be glad when Sunday gets here, next Sunday gets here, because then I know I've done for the season anyway.
How do you stay involved with the league? You're still out there doing your thing.
I work every day for the National Football League. I'm involved in bringing players to the draft. I'm involved in selecting the players that we bring to the draft. I'm just involved in a lot of ways, and I'm happy that they put up with me.
Congratulations.
Thanks.
One other thing, you were, especially from the NFL standpoint, you were one of the first people to mine black colleges. I mean, Tutal Jones is the only black college player to be drafted #1 overall still to this day. Can you just talk about going to black colleges and getting players?
Well, Clarence, let me say this to you, that, you know, a lot of people, it's always hard to say you were first.
Mm-hmm.
We were the first person to have a full-time scout that covered the black colleges, Dick Mansberg. He did a great job. And we came up with players like Jethro Pugh from Elizabeth City Teachers College. We did a lot of guys, Rayfield Wright. We did a great job. I'm still on a committee by the black colleges to select their Hall of Famer for that year. And just recently, last year, we got our running back from Winston-Salem State in. So we thought that there was a great deal of prospects there, and it was really a great place, and I think we did a great job.
And Tutal Jones, the guy, he didn't even play football in high school.
He was a basketball player, and he got his name Tutal because they didn't have any pants that were big enough,
Right.
and his pants were about 6 inches short,
Right.
and somebody gave him the name of Tutal. But You know, Too Tall had a great career for us, and he was in my estimation, was one of the best players we ever drafted.
Thanks, Gil.